Very much. I'm going to take you through some slides on Bangladesh and Pakistan. I'm just going to share the slides. Hang on. Hopefully you can see those now.
Yes.
Yes. Clear.
Yes. So Bangladesh and Pakistan, non-traditional markets for Indonesia, but they have been earmarked for some years now by the coal industry in Asia as potential long-term growth markets for thermal coal demand. But actually, I think it's actually looking like much of that opportunity has already passed. So let's have a look, first of all, at Bangladesh. And this is the current power capacity situation in Bangladesh, according to the latest figures from the Bangladesh Power Development Board. And as you can see, capacity is dominated by gas, that's domestic gas, and oil. And oil-fired power is, of course, a very expensive source of power for Bangladesh. And Bangladesh's domestic gas supply is dwindling and has been for some time. And because of this, there has been a plan in Bangladesh for a number of years now to replace reliance on domestic gas and oil with reliance on imported coal and LNG. And this chart is taken from the latest version of Bangladesh's long-term power plan, the Power System Master Plan 2016, which was revisited and revised slightly in 2018. So this is the current plan as it stands. And as you can see, over the years 2025, 2030, 2035, the proportion of coal in the Bangladesh power system was planned to increase quite significantly from practically zero, where it is now. And as a result of this, there is currently around 20 gigawatts of coal-fired power plants in Bangladesh's power development pipeline, which virtually all of which would use imported coal. However, we are now in a situation where the next version of the Power System Master Plan, Power System Master Plan 2021, is now in preparation. And some recent events in 2020 are making it look like the 2021 version of Bangladesh's long-term power plan is going to look significantly different to the current one. So why is it going to look different? First of all, we've seen very recently, just in the last few weeks, that Bangladesh's Renewable Energy Development Agency has made a significant U-turn and is now backing a plan to install 40,000 megawatts of solar by 2041 in Bangladesh. And as I say, that's a significant turnaround. Previously, the development agency had been of the impression or the opinion that there was not large amounts of land available in Bangladesh for the installation of solar power. And it was not particularly enthusiastic about the potential for solar power in Bangladesh. That now seems to have changed quite dramatically just in the last few weeks. Also very significantly, we've seen reports in Bangladesh from various sources that the Bangladesh government is about to abandon, or is certainly seriously considering abandoning, its coal-fired power pipeline and focus on LNG rather than coal. And it is reported that the reason that Bangladesh is increasingly concerned about coal-fired power is the difficulty it expects to find in financing a further fleet of coal-fired power plants, given the number of global banks turning away from further coal power and coal mine financing. And there are also other concerns in Bangladesh with air pollution as well, but it seems to be that they are particularly concerned about how on earth they would finance this fleet of coal-fired power stations. So it looks like Bangladesh may well be about to cancel all of its coal-fired power plants in the pipeline which have not yet begun construction or achieved financial close. And that could be something in the region of 13 to 16 gigawatts of coal-fired power plants cancelled. And so sort of conservatively, that would reduce Bangladesh's coal-fired power pipeline from 20 gigawatts down to about 7 gigawatts. And we've identified the list of plants that have either already begun construction, have completed construction, or are likely to begin construction soon and be completed. In this table, it comes to about 7 gigawatts. So currently there is less than 2 gigawatts of coal-fired power operational in Bangladesh, and only one coal plant, the Pyra Phase 1 coal plant, 1.3 gigawatts, is operational. That is the only one that is currently importing coal from Indonesia. There will be some growth, it would seem, up another 6 gigawatts, up to 7.3 gigawatts by the time all these plants that survive cancellation are completed. So it does suggest there's going to be some increased demand for thermal coal for power generation in Bangladesh, but nowhere near as much as the coal industry thought there would be even last year, perhaps. Although I must emphasize that this, nothing official has been released by the Bangladesh government regarding the cancellation of these plants, but that is the way it appears to be going. However, there is another issue to consider in Bangladesh when we're looking at coal demand. It's not going to be a particularly accurate calculation if you simply look at where Bangladesh's coal-fired power plant capacity will be by, say, 2025, and then calculate coal demand based on that. And that is because Bangladesh has a significant overcapacity problem. This is a bit of a theme with both Bangladesh and Pakistan, which we'll get onto in a moment. Both countries have overestimated the rate of power demand growth and have built a lot of new power capacity quite quickly, and have built new capacity in excess of the demand growth. And as a result, Bangladesh is in an overcapacity situation in which many of its thermal power plants are lying idle much of the time, often as much as 2/3 of the time. And this doesn't look like it's improving in the medium or even longer term. So although there will be around 7 gigawatts of coal-fired power plants, they are likely to be used at a very low utilization, which would further reduce demand for thermal coal. This chart shows the blue bars are the total power capacity for Bangladesh over the years, growing quite steadily and then suddenly leaping up at a quicker pace from around 2017 onwards. And the yellow line is the overall utilization rate for the total thermal power capacity in Bangladesh. And it reached a new low this year for the fiscal year ending June 2020, reduced to 40% utilization across the whole fleet. Now, of course, that will have been impacted by COVID-19, which has seen lower demand in the second quarter in Bangladesh's last fiscal year. But as you can see from the chart, that decline in utilization has been a trend that has pre-existed COVID-19. Furthermore, it is also expected that if they are completed on time, another 2,000 megawatts of power capacity will be added to the Bangladesh system by the end of this year. That's around 10% of Bangladesh's current capacity, slightly under. So adding another 10% by the end of the year, which will of course make overcapacity and underutilization worse. There is also a 2,400 megawatt nuclear power plant under construction in Bangladesh. And again, if that's completed on time, and that's a big if for a nuclear power plant, that will be coming online at some point during this decade. So, and that's adding another 10% to the system. So we've seen a significant turnaround in the situation in Bangladesh this year. The ambition in Bangladesh for coal-fired power build-out seems to be reducing significantly. And although there will obviously be some capacity additions in terms of coal-fired power in Bangladesh, the likely low utilization of these plants will reduce demand growth for thermal coal in the power system even further. Okay, so let's turn now to Pakistan. And again, I'm starting here with the current situation. This is the split of total generation in the last fiscal year. So like Bangladesh, they are fairly dependent on domestic gas and oil-fired power, but they are also more diversified than Bangladesh. So they have hydropower, they already have nuclear power. They have some significant wind power. They have developed renewable energy more than Bangladesh so far. And they also have more currently operating coal-fired power in Pakistan than in Bangladesh. And most of that coal-fired power capacity that is currently operating is fueled by imported coal. But that has proved very expensive because over the last few years, we've seen the Pakistan rupee weaken significantly, which has made coal imports expensive. And a further significant difference between Pakistan and Bangladesh is that Pakistan has very large domestic coal reserves of its own, unlike Bangladesh. And that is now informing its long-term power plans. And this table is, well, the figures in this table are taken from Pakistan's latest long-term power plan, the Indicative Generation Capacity Expansion Plan 2047, or IGCEP. This was released this year. This is the latest plan, released in early 2020. And so the columns of figures here, we have the planned power capacity by the different power sources and the planned generation from those sources by 2030, as given by the plan. And then I've just calculated a utilization rate based on those figures. And I've just highlighted the top two lines there for imported coal and domestic coal. So by 2030, there's a roughly even plan. The plan is for a roughly even split between imported coal-fired power capacity and capacity which is fueled by domestic coal. But if you look on the right, the utilization of those two sources is significantly different. 60% utilization as planned for coal plants fueled by domestic coal, and only 14% for plants fueled by imported coal. An extremely low utilization, obviously. And this is indicative of the fact that Pakistan is now swinging very clearly away from emphasis on using imported coal and towards domestic coal. In the longer term, Pakistan is now clearly intending to be reliant mostly on domestic coal, hydro, some nuclear power, and renewable energy. And it has a new renewable energy target to reach 30% of capacity by 2030, as you can see in this plan. So that is an important shift, and that obviously has implications for the expected capacity of coal-fired power plants in Pakistan, which will be fueled by imported coal. Currently, there's around 4 gigawatts of plants operating in Pakistan which use imported coal. There was 2 gigawatts of planned new coal plants which were to use imported coal. They've been cancelled over the last 2 years. There is also 1 gigawatt of planned coal plants which were initially intended to use imported coal, but have now had their plans changed, so they will use domestic coal instead. There is still 1.8 gigawatts of planned plants, one of which is under construction, which will use imported coal. So that will, assuming those get built, that will mean there will be 5.8 gigawatts of coal-fired power plants in Pakistan which use imported coal. And that is looking like that will be the limit. They will not build any more. Now, like Bangladesh, as I sort of mentioned earlier, both Bangladesh and Pakistan, they have overestimated the rate of power demand growth in their nations. This is also resulting in Pakistan having a growing overcapacity situation, like in Bangladesh. And so, again, looking at the likely capacity of coal-fired power plants that use imported coal does not necessarily give you a good idea of what the actual thermal coal demand will be for those plants. Because, as I say, we are seeing overcapacity in Pakistan as well, and low utilization rates. So this chart is doing a sort of similar thing to the one I showed for Bangladesh. It's showing just the thermal power capacity in Pakistan over the years. And again, the yellow line is the utilization of that capacity, of the thermal power capacity in Pakistan. And we've seen in 2019-20, the last fiscal year, the utilization rate of thermal power has dropped to just 37%. And of course, that will have been impacted by COVID-19 again. But it's also clear from this chart that this trend started some years ago, and it's a continuing trend. So I think in Pakistan's case, the imported coal-fired power capacity is already close to its peak, currently around 4 gigawatts. It's looking like it'll end up being around 5.8 gigawatts, and that's about it. But because of those low planned utilization rates and the low current utilization rates for thermal power in Pakistan, it's entirely possible that thermal coal demand for power generation in the nation is at or close to peak already. And that's all I have to say for Bangladesh and Pakistan.